Hey, and welcome to another edition of A History of Caged Violence, the web series that shines a light on the dark days of MMA. If you watched the first couple episodes, then you know the drill. I, the J-Shot, take a look at the humble beginnings of mixed martial arts, and you, the audience, sit there and ask, is this supposed to be some kind of joke? Today we're forging ahead past what was called the Ultimate Fighting Challenge and the Ultimate Fighting Championship 2 or Part 2, and into UFC 3, dubbed for some reason the American Dream. A promo package is shown explaining to everyone that Royce Gracie, though unassuming, can easily kill you if he so desires. They want to make sure everybody knows Gracie has won back-to-back and done so without breaking a sweat. And anyone who's going to become the Ultimate Fighting Championship Champion the third is going to have to deal with the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu master.
The question tonight is, can he do it again?
Can he? Only time will tell, but returning commentators Brian Kilmeade and Jim Brown definitely aren't expecting a new challenger to knock Gracie off his pedestal.
That is going to be impossible because he's been working on new techniques that will make him even more dangerous.
Wow, spoiler alert there, JB. Guess there's no real point in even watching the event if another Gracie win is inevitable. But you know what? I don't really have a whole lot else to do, so I guess maybe I'll just stick it out for a bit anyway. Ah, nuts. I was afraid of that. It's Ben Perry, back again to make sure Kilmeade doesn't run away with the title for absolute biggest joke of a haircut in history. Perry says Gracie is becoming a household name, and speaking of names, name drops a few more Gracies to flex that jiu-jitsu knowledge like only Ben Perry can. Then, and you're not going to believe this, Kilmeade actually refers to the structure the fighters will compete in by the right name.
I can tell you where they're going to fight, and it's in the octagon.
Woo, 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 octagon, octagon, octagon. But of course, just saying octagon isn't enough. You have to make sure everyone knows the rules that go with one. Luckily, we get this helpful graphic. Kilmeade starts with no rounds and insinuates that's something new.
Why no rounds? There were one in UFC 1.
Incorrect, but moving on.
No time limit. Now, no time limit kind of talks about what we just talked about now.
Agreed, it's pretty much the same thing. But this third one will probably turn some heads.
One way to get in. That's the way both fighters will do. They'll go through the gate. That is the only way out.
Okay, I think I know what he means, but it's not like it has a roof on it or anything. And besides, chain link is the preferred climbing fence of school skippers and sneaky teens nationwide.
The referee can stop it now. That's something new. The manager can stop it, or he can tap out 4 times.
That sentence starts off so well, but really botches the landing. Kudos to the organizers for giving Big John McCarthy the ability to call off the action if necessary, but why 4 taps? Just in case someone decided 3 taps in that they'd rather let their arm get broken? What early UFC would be complete without a rundown of how the fighters get down? They show shots of the competitors at a press conference, complete with a poster on the podium teasing a Royce Gracie-Ken Shamrock rematch. Whew, I can't wait for that. It's then explained that fighters are largely grouped into 2 categories, punchers and grapplers, and then goes on to demonstrate that first point by showing 3 guys throwing kicks, knees, and 0 punches. Fans now get their first look at the fight card. A real royal sampler of martial arts are on tap this time. Karate, kung fu, shoot fighting, judo, muay thai, jiu-jitsu, and taekwondo. And hey, Kilmeade, what's that last one called?
A sumo wrestler.
Wait, what?
Sumo.
Do you mean sumo?
Yarborough is coming with sumo and judo.
Okay, whatever. The commentary team talks a little about each fight before really selling the first round's last bout by increasing the mystique of the man set to face the returning champ.
It's not like we didn't have room for the last name. We would have put it in, but there is no last name when it comes to Kimo.
There isn't? That's so cool. Just goes by Kimo. Nope, definitely no last name with him.
My name is Kimo Leopoldo.
Oh my God, they lied to us. You know what? I'm going to let it slide this time, but I'm going to stay on my toes for the rest of the show, just in case. And you know what? Even if he does have a whopping 2 names, he still looks dangerous. Check out the size of this guy, and the fact that he let his friend Jesus tattoo his own name right on his belly. Even Jim Brown's with me on this.
And he has one of those things in the back of his head that scares me to death.
All right, time to get to the part where people hurt each other. Almost. First, they need to introduce some fight officials to try to gain some credibility. That means we get our first look at cutman Leon Tabbs. Already a veteran of the boxing game here, he'd continue to piece MMA fighters back together for nearly 20 years after this. Legend. Now we get an in-depth look at the first combatant, Emmanuel Yarborough. Listed at 616 pounds and moving with the delicate grace of a high 500-pounder, he hits the bag before loading up plates and repping out curls. No, it's okay. We don't need to see the weights on the bar. We trust you. You always hear the hardest part is simply stepping inside the octagon, but it usually isn't meant, literally.
Unbelievable.
Let's just hold our applause till the fight's over, shall we, Ben? I mean, he's still got to face Keith Hackney, a kung fu fighter with a dimple on his chin and a twinkle in his eye. Sure, he's older, about a foot shorter, and weighs as much as one of Yarborough's morning dumps, but hey, give the little guy a chance.
He won. That was the last Sumo guy.
Oh my God, he did it. He hit him right in the face. But then he lets Yarborough get a hold of him, and he's nearly crushed and smacked to death. Luckily, though, Yarborough breaks the third rule of the octagon. No way out, lied to again.
That was Sumo.
They restart and Hackney resumes floating like a butterfly before stinging like a bee. Down goes Yarborough one more time while Hackney channels the ancient art of kung fu, forming a club with his own arm and beating his opponent senseless, just like the Chinese masters intended when they created the discipline 4,000 years ago. After taking dozens of shots to the skull, Yarborough taps. He then gets stopped for a post-fight interview where he's now being repeatedly attacked by a towel instead of a fist.
It's absolutely incredible the way you sat there, you were taking it, and it was just almost like you couldn't get up.
Perry, you are spot on here, sir. A guy gets punched in the head, doesn't get up. Definitely incredible stuff. Couldn't have said it better myself. On to the second bout where we get another look at returning fighter Ken Shamrock. He's shown grappling in denim before he makes his way to the cage in his signature robe. His opponent is judo practitioner Lino-Jure, who throws and chokes some poor guy over and over. You get the point. The two seem like a good match for one another, both grapplers of a similar age, height, and weight. Shamrock has opted to wear shoes though, which means he's not permitted to kick. Guess there are more laws of the octagon than we thought. Shamrock and Lino-Jure look for an opening for about a minute before the world's most dangerous man scores a takedown. Lino-Jure keeps a very active guard, throwing little punches repeatedly and looking for an escape. The battle goes for just under 5 minutes with Shamrock controlling the action but surprisingly not attempting any real submissions. Lino-Jure eventually reaches his limit for punches to the face and gives up. Shamrock hits the road to prepare for his second round date with Hackney. The other side of the bracket starts with the evening's first international contest. Roland Payne, a local boy who came to do two things: welcome Canadian Harold Howard to the UFC and make some sweet puns. And he's all out of puns.
My name's Roland and I plan on introducing my opponents to some good old local Carolina Payne.
Okay, now he's all out of puns. And on his way to the octagon too, to face one of the most rage-filled human beings this world's ever churned out. If those eyes don't say it all, his extreme hatred for sandbags really fills in everything else you need to know. Well, actually, there's lots more to know, like how in 2009 he'd be charged with attempted murder, assault with a weapon, and a slew of other offenses after deciding to attack his sister and nephew with a hammer before driving his car into a casino. The horrible incident resulted in him being sentenced to nearly 5 years in jail, meaning he's probably out now, and maybe I should just watch what I say and not make fun of him. It's just that he makes it so easy.
My name is Harold Clarence Howard. I'm representing Canada and Niagara Falls in the Ultimate Fighting Challenge. We have a saying back home that if you're coming on, come on.
Oh boy, here he comes, ripping off the Gracie train. At least he's not driving though, am I right? We even get a shot of his manager, the same guy who talked through Kevin Rozier's post-fight interviews in UFC 1. Check out that outfit this time though. Red robe on, shirt off. After 5 minutes of Howard bouncing back and forth, it's time to get it on. The big guy in the beater takes the fight to the hometown hero, executing a suplex and delivering a shin to Roland's face while on the ground, who hangs on and takes top position. Not much of a grappler, Payne gives up the spot and gets suplexed once more. The two then just clench their teeth and slug it out. Home field advantage turns out to be pretty overrated as Howard gets the best of Payne and McCarthy steps in to save the day. He struts around the cage and hightails it to the back before Perry can try for a post-fight interview, leaving the local Muay Thai champ to shake the cobwebs while still in the cage. Finishing off the opening round, it's the champ Royce Gracie up against the man known sometimes simply as Kimo. They list Gracie at 176 pounds and show video of him slowly working locks and generally looking his unassuming self. Then we see his opponent, Kimo Leopoldo, throwing kicks and doing half reps on the bench. Worse still, we then get a shot of his awful ink that would make even the guys on Tattoo Rescue cringe, complete with a healthy dose of back knee. Ew. And if that cross isn't enough, check this out. Kimo walks to the cage carrying a giant one on his back. He's a minister who says his purpose is to bring the gospel of Jesus Christ throughout the whole world. Fair enough, but is punching people in the face really the best way to accomplish this? The bell rings and Kimo shows his technical prowess, throwing perhaps the worst punch the UFC had ever and would ever see. Hoist presses him up against the cage and a grappling war ensues that stays on the feet for a while before he tries a takedown that results in Kimo taking the jiu-jitsu master's back. Gracie is patient and reverses, but almost immediately Kimo returns the favor. Hoist then starts to gain some control via hair pull, throwing short punches at the priest. He stands up in guard, allowing Hoist to escape, but Kimo hangs onto his waist. Just when you think he's really in trouble though, Kimo falls into a Gracie armbar and taps. It's easily Gracie's toughest challenge in the octagon yet, similar to how afterwards, clearing the octagon becomes John McCarthy's toughest challenge yet.
The advances. A big question is how much does
Both men are carried off by their teammates as the commentators discuss the epic battle they just witnessed, and then Kilmeade makes an important announcement regarding the next fight.
We do have an announcement to make. Felix Lee Mitchell will replace Keith Hackney.
Can't say it's really surprising, but we now find out Keith Hackney has withdrawn from the tournament after smashing his hand, wrist, and forearm repeatedly against the skull of a 600-pound behemoth. So alternate fighter Felix Lee Mitchell gets the call and he looks tough as nails. He's every bit as big as his opponent Ken Shamrock and throws big bombs to boot. Master tactician Ben Perry has some solid advice that he thinks would get the newest competitor straight through to the finals.
Felix shook my hand earlier today and almost broke it, so I advised him to shake his opponent's hand.
He enters the cage wearing gloves but abandons them before the fight starts. He then crosses the octagon, apparently trying to convince Shammy to give him a hug. Ken obliges by shooting in and wrapping him up. After holding him against the cage for a while, Mitchell looks visibly worn down. Kilmeade casually tosses out some more laws of the octagon they didn't bother to mention until the fifth fight, which seems slightly important.
There's no biting. There's no eye gouges. But if they're done, you're not disqualified. You're fined $1,000, and that goes to the man you did it to.
Eventually, the fight hits the ground and Shamrock takes full mount. Mitchell then gives up his back and gets a perfect rear naked choke and a ticket out of the tournament. The commentary team then talks about the importance and emergence of grappling, giving Ben Perry the perfect opportunity to lie and walk back his dumbest comments from UFC 2.
After 6 months or so, can you become proficient at ground grappling or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu? And what I was saying, not against another Gracie, but absolutely against another martial artist.
Yeah, okay, Ben, nice try. But whatever, we're moving on to the next semifinal. It's going to be the calculated poise of Royce Gracie against the unrestrained fury of Harold Howard. In the event the mulleted martial artist was going to get a chance to take on the defending champ, he was asked his thoughts on such a contest and said that whether it's on the ground or on the feet, he's good to go.
I'm looking forward to meeting Mr. Gracie on the mat, but I'm also looking forward to allowing myself to let my karate aspect of it take over too.
He finishes by saying the best man will win and makes his way to the cage for his date with destiny. The Gracie train does its return trip and it's pretty obvious Royce looks a little off. He's leaning against the cage while Howard bounces back and forth. Rich Goins announces him as the Canadian World Jiu-Jitsu Champion. Interesting. But before McCarthy can say his signature line, a towel flies from Gracie's corner. Royce is injured or exhausted or both, and now officially for the first time ever, a UFC final will be decided without Royce Gracie. Howard advances to face Ken Shamrock just like that. He's pumped about this turn of events, but not nearly as pumped as Kimo and his manager, who decide to ham it up for the crowd, proud to be responsible for Gracie withdrawing. Once again, they get booted out of the octagon like the jackasses they are, and it's here that the UFC shows off their first ever celebrity attendee. It's 1994. Who could it be? Madonna? Michael Jackson? Better. It's Gary Busey. Appropriate, because if they ever make a movie about Harold Howard's life, he's the guy to play him. With the last semifinal cancelled, it's time to fill time. The commentators recap the night's fights that actually happened, and Kilmeade perhaps overstates Kimo's reputation.
He's a legend. No one's going to forget Kimo.
In a shocking turn of events, they receive word that a fighter is injured and has to withdraw. No, they're not talking about Keith Hackney or Royce Gracie. Now Ken Shamrock is pulling out. What does that mean, you ask?
Here he is, making his way through for the first time tonight and in the finals.
Yep, that's correct. Alternate fighter Steve Jenum is inserted into the championship fight. He's a police officer from Omaha, trained in ninjutsu apparently, and more importantly, fresh as a freakin' daisy. That means Harold Howard will take on a law enforcement member 15 years early, if you're picking up what I'm throwing down. And speaking of throwing down, Mr. Mullet is definitely ready to do just that.
I went back a few minutes ago to try to get an interview with him. He was so keyed up, he was yelling and screaming, jumping up and down his hands. He was ready to go.
Well, that's terrifying. Good old Steve Jenum doesn't seem worried though. Maybe he didn't catch the promo packages. Big John makes sure they're ready to go, and we are on our way to crowning a new UFC champ. Howard throws a couple fakes before attempting a forward flip kick. While it doesn't land on Jenum, it very well might land Howard in the Internet Meme Hall of Fame someday. He continues to press the action and goes all crazy eyes as he sinks in a standing guillotine choke, which he takes to the ground. Jenum eventually escapes and takes full mount after an easy takedown on an exhausted Howard. And less than a minute and a half into his UFC career, he shocks the world.
Unbelievable! Alternate wins the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
An alternate win!
Howard is a good sport about the loss and congratulates the new champ. He then exits stage right and gives a less than coherent interview.
I told you if it worked, it worked. And it didn't, I didn't. So in the end, it didn't. I love you, children. I love your wife, and I believe it or not, I love my family too.
Jenum is then presented the $60,000 check, and Perry follows up one successful interview with another.
You earned this thing, you came in and you did it. You fought a really, really tough Harold Howard. Unbelievable.
Yeah, he was tough. That was really something else.
And there you have it. The UFC has a new champion, and his name is Steve Jenum. To be the man, you have to beat the man? Meh, not exactly. More like you have to beat the man was going to beat when the man gets injured. Not as catchy sounding, but in this case, it's accurate. While the first two UFCs showed fighters the importance of a well-rounded skill set, UFC 3 was a lesson for the promoters. Allowing a fighter who hadn't yet even set foot in the octagon compete for the top prize is a bit of a joke, one they'd be forced to address immediately going forward. No, it isn't as thrilling as UFC 1 or as exciting as UFC 2, but at least for me, UFC 3 holds a special place in my heart, as it's the first MMA event I ever saw. I still remember expecting broken arms, bloody faces, and at least 2 people to get killed, thanks to growing up on martial arts movies. Watching this made me realize flying spin kicks only happen in Hollywood. Well, almost. As always, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to see more in-depth looks at the early days of MMA. I'm the J Shot, and thanks for watching.